Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet, and today I'm going to bring you 5 more tips and tricks for clamping. And you know, if you're enjoying this series and you want to see more and you haven't subscribed yet, I invite you to do that and click that little notification bell, and let's get on with the first clamping hack. When I'm gluing boards together, I use these bar clamps. They're fairly inexpensive and I've been using them for years and years, and at this point there's no point in switching. What I discovered a long time ago when I first started doing woodworking is you're always under a little bit of a time pressure when you're gluing boards together, because the glue only has a certain amount of time before it starts not sticking well. So you're kind of in a little bit of a rush, and often you've got the boards leaned up on end and you're painting and gluing things, and this always happened to me. They would always fall over. And you know, I've got this orange brand here, I've got another brand here, this black brand, and they do the same thing. They roll over on me. So what I did a long time ago was make a rack for these. Now this rack is nothing special. It's just a piece of wood. I think it started out being, maybe 3 inches by 3 inches. And what I did, if you look at these little V's, you'll notice there's little V's everywhere and they all line up. And the reason they line up was because I started with a single piece of wood and I just flipped it over onto my table saw and set the blade at an angle so that all of these V's would be at a 30-degree angle. I found that having them a little bit sharper rather than say 45, the clamps sat in there better. So after I cut, and you'll also notice that they're not spaced evenly, and that's because when I'm gluing up boards, I can pick any 2 or 3 of them, and they're all the same size and they're all the same depth, but I can move the clamps around on them. And when I cut these out, after I cut out all of the V's, then I just ripped the board on my table saw so that both parts would be exactly the same. And if you look at the end, it's not very pretty, but you can see there's a couple of circles down here. And what that's for is when I have these on my workbench, if for some reason I got them end for end, that the V's don't line up properly. So that way I always know that I can keep them that way. But look at when we put clamps on them, how steady they are. So what I do with these V blocks now is I just preset my clamps at wherever I think they need to be for the wood that I'm going to be clamping. And you'll notice these two are pretty close together, and that's on purpose, and this one's a little bit further apart, and that's because I can space these sort of wherever I want. And now when I put the wood on, look at, these aren't going to fall. You can move them around. They're not going to roll over. Now I can put my wood on. I can do my glue ups as I need to and lay the wood down and clamp it. And these clamps, I can space them wherever I want. I can also put a clamp on top if I want to do that, so I can do some different kinds of clamping. And when I'm all done, I just take the whole clamp thing off, move it away, and I can put the next set of clamps on there if I've got more clamping to do. Just a really simple way of keeping your clamps nice and steady on your workbench. I've learned over the years that when I keep myself organized, it reduces my level of stress and eliminates my frustration from things that don't always go the way they could in the workshop. This is my rack that I keep my clamps on, and it's got all of my clamps in this area. And I'm going to show you close up. So what you're looking at here is just a 2x3 piece of fur or something, but you'll notice that it's a little bit out from the wall. And what I've done with it, I wanted to make sure that this part here, when I put the clamps on, that the handles aren't going to hit the wall. So I had to measure from this distance to the end of the clamp. From this distance to the end of the clamp, so that those wouldn't fit on there. But now when I put my clamps on there, I can just put them on there and I don't have to worry where the handles are. They're not going to bump anything. And this black stuff on here is that anti-skid material that you can buy. Very inexpensive. I use it all over the workshop. And now I can just put any of my clamps on there. They always sit. They never fall off. I never have to jockey around with anything. All the clamps are always in the same place, large ones down there, moving to shorter ones this way. It's just so easy now when I do my clamping. At one point, I used to keep all my spring clamps in a little box, and they would always get stuck together. You'd pull out one, and 2 or 3 would come out with it. Now I just put them on this rack like this, and it's so easy to keep them at different lengths as well. But I also, you'll see there's a couple little holes in there. I found they didn't work a little well, so I put the eye holes on there, and now I can keep all of my clamping all together. It's close to the workbench. I can just grab whatever I want, and when I'm finished with it, I don't have to fuss about where it goes. It goes right back there, and I always know where my spring clamps are. I have lots of various C-clamps, and I use these quite a bit. The thing that I found a few years ago when I was doing a project that had a special, I kept it repeating one of the projects, and what would happen is I was clamping something and I didn't have much room, and I was always doing this with one of the clamps, trying to clamp it, and I tried to, and you couldn't hold it there, you had to fiddle around with it. So I came up with the idea of putting a doweling on the end, and this isn't a new idea. This has been around for a long time, but all you need, I actually used a piece of something that I cut off on the lathe, but doweling would work just fine. And basically all you do is take a piece of doweling, just cut about ½ an inch off the bottom of it, and then you just cut a slot in it like that. And that's where this little handle will come in. So you basically just cut the handle off, make the handle a little bit shorter, cut the 2 ends off so that it'll fit inside that, and all you need to do is epoxy that in, epoxy the bottom on, and now you've got a clamp that you don't have to worry about this lever getting in the way. You can just twist it like that, and it works great. What I also found is it's slower to twist these, so don't do all of your clamps like that. Leave some of them long like that, and you'll get to know pretty soon which ones, whether to grab this one or one with a handle. But with these, because they're slower, what I did was I just put a hole in them, and now I can very quickly size them so that wherever I'm putting them, I can now put them in there and very quickly tighten that down. So quick little thing you can do for your C-clamps, put a little bit of a round handle on them, make them for tight areas for clamping. Weeks ago when I was building something, I needed to push something apart. I just forget what it was, some legs or something, just to align them. And I didn't have something to do that with except this clamp. So what I did was I just made some little wooden pieces with holes that I could put these together and use these quick clamps. I love these quick clamps. If you're following my channel, you'll see me use them a lot. And now I can actually, I put an extra hole in there so you could put a bolt through, but you get the idea. And now when I move this, I can move this apart, and it actually works as pushing, so these two are sort of pushing against something in here so I can move things apart. So just a quick way of changing a pulling clamp into a pushing clamp. Well, that concludes my video on some tips and tricks for clamping and some ways to make life a little bit easier for you in the workshop. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.